on to the first keynote session of the day, we are privileged to call upon stage Mr. Douglas Peris, Chief Executive Officer, AdStream. Sir is a seasoned corporate executive and ICT industry consultant. He established 3 businesses in 2011 that served the demand for private cloud computing infrastructure, sales performance and sales effectiveness consulting, and a digital media company focused on internet advertising for captive portal networks. Prior to founding his own companies, Sir has worked with British Telecom as Vice President, Customer Service and Network Operations, Asia Pacific. Mr. Peris has also held executive-level positions at Avaya, Lucent, Unisys, and Telstra. Sir holds a master's degree in Management Information Systems, a postgraduate diploma in Finance, and a Bachelor of Business degree. He was previously a member of the Australian Computer Society, Institute of Management Consultants, and the Australian Institute of Management. He has held positions as a board member of the Edith Cowan University Faculty of Business and a committee member of the Western Australian Chinese Chamber of Commerce. Sir is currently based in Singapore and has extensive cross-cultural experience, having worked in the Asian region for the past 12 years. Sir, SITM welcomes you to Communicate 12. Mr. Peris is going to speak on the topic, Creating New Revenue Streams for Telcos. I request Sir to preside over the session.
I enjoyed that last session, M2M. Did you guys like it? When I first heard M2M, I wasn't sure what machine-to-machine was. I thought of Terminator 3, the rise of the machines. And it was so appropriate that you see the logo, there was that robotic hand and the human hand. So it was Terminator 3, wasn't it? Rise of the machines. Anyway, good afternoon. A couple of other things from that last session. The alumni that was talked about this morning. So, Dr. Kashi, Professor Patil and I are Lucent alumni. So we only just found that out today, this morning. A small moment that may have completely missed you is Mr. Matthias and Dr. Kashi shaking hands. Not often you get Cisco and Avaya shaking hands, let alone at the same table together. But the most impressive part was, and I can't see him here, was the Commodore. He just reminded me of Robert De Niro. I just couldn't help see that resemblance. So when you see him at lunchtime, you should go and ask him, has anyone ever said you look like Robert De Niro? Anyway, I'd like to thank Professor Patil, the organising committee, the superb organising committee, invited guests, speakers, ladies and gentlemen, future captains of industry, welcome, and I'm so honoured to be here today. I've been travelling to India for the past 12 years. Many times I had to get a visa just recently. It was my 17th visa to India. I've been coming to Pune for most of the 12 years. I used to have big operations at Margapata City with Avaya, and then recently Hinjawadi with BT. So, as I mentioned, my name is Doug Peris. I am CEO of AdStream, a digital media company. And we're running a little bit late, but it's also day 2. Now, one of the good things about being on day 2 is you get to be able to recap and perhaps talk about some stuff from day 1. The trap is a lot of stuff that I meant to say could have been said on day 1. And that would have been a very short session this morning, but luckily not so. Now, you're probably wondering why an ad guy is at a telco seminar. Or perhaps, what the hell does a telco guy know about advertising? So, good question. I hope at the end of this presentation then that you'll see that my career transition is not as absurd as it possibly may be at first look. Okay, so just on what I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to go through a slow, dreary, boring introduction. But it won't go for that long, so keep awake. I'll get into some theory, which could be useful, because this is an MBA, and I'm imagining research is a large component of your curriculum. And then the OTT, or what we call the other guys. If you're in telco, or if you're an OTT guy, then the telcos are the other guys. I'll talk a little bit about digital media, so something a little bit different in that space, and the space that I'm in at the moment. And if I were a telco, then what can I do? Some interesting stuff. And of course, who could possibly get away from not advertising AdStream when we're an advertising company? So this guy, and I couldn't work out whether he was a doctor or a sir or a whatever, but he obviously was a mister at one stage. So Charles Darwin talked about the natural laws of, and he talked about creatures that are able to adapt to their ever-changing environments are the ones destined for survival. So just like telcos, they need to evolve and adapt to the changing landscape of today's communications environment. So there was an old operating model, and today there's a new operating model. And I've worked in telcos where there's always an operating model. But this one's come about from the SDL organisation, who work quite closely with the World Economic Forum. And they've come up with the two-sided model that telecom players can follow. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. The two key words here are adapt and ever-changing environment. Okay, you got me there. That's more than two words, but I think you get the picture, right? You have to adapt, but most importantly, you have to recognize that this is an ever-changing environment. And the trick is not just to have those words in your mind, but how it is you're going to adapt. Yesterday, there were some good examples. The VCR, the Walkman, Kodak, under protection of Chapter 11 at the moment. Friendster. Put up your hands if you're on Facebook. Keep your hands up if you're on Facebook. And keep your hands up if you're on Friendster. There you go. Okay, so somebody didn't adapt. Somebody didn't realise the ever-changing environment. Somebody's a billionaire and somebody isn't. Okay. So I didn't want to be like Anne Robinson says, therefore you are the weakest link. However, the question remains whether telcos recognise the changing environment and what they're doing to adapt. So some familiar headlines. A couple there about caps on making revenue, or areas that you thought, if as a telco, you could actually cream it. I'm talking about roaming costs. I've not dared to turn on my data roaming, and I bother Srikanth over here to keep logging on to the wireless so I can get mail. Chinese telecom firms setting up in South Korea. Telecom industries looking to other industries to replicate success. And also, my friend Jai is not here, but I think he was at the panel last night. He'd love to hear about movie and video distribution and the trends in some of the big countries and the revenue growth coming out of that. Some of you may have seen this. It's a recent model from Gartner. The horizontal axis is compound annual growth rate, going in percentage from 0 to 100. The vertical axis is EBIT from 0 to 30%. You'll see that some segments are on the left of that line, which means there's no real point doing a lot of focus work on there, and the colours give it away too. So you may notice that consumer voice and enterprise voice are on the wrong side of that vertical line. You'll see that the big circle towards the top of the chart is SMS or messaging, and it's making a lot of money. But what is really interesting are these ones in the dark blue, non-traditional services. They're tiny circles at the moment. However, look where they are on the chart. They're on high parts of the compound annual growth rates. They're on pretty reasonable EBITs, a couple of them. And there are people who are playing big in that space too. Not many vendors, though, telco vendors. So non-traditional services will account for about 8.1% of worldwide traditional telecoms revenue in the next couple of years. There are some ambitious carriers who hope that they can actually double that. And I think that you'll see some things happening in that space with telcos playing into the non-traditional services area. Alliances and collaboration will grow to capture these opportunities. Media and entertainment, M2M, there we go again. Cloud computing are promising areas. And the thing is, there's not one of those non-traditional services areas will compensate for the erosion of traditional telecom. So in other words, there is no killer app. They still need to focus on efficiencies and also develop a comprehensive but usable and, I guess, attractive suite of non-traditional services. You'll see carriers lowering their OPEX and maximising a bit of cash flow, and they'll be investing again in non-traditional services. Another thing that you'll see more and more of, even though you would have heard it from them 100 million times in the past, is that the consumer is king and that they will focus on your needs. But they really will this time, spend a lot of money on trying to get a deeper knowledge of their customers and consumers of their services. The two-sided business model. So a little bit of theory. And I did ask around yesterday to see if you guys had actually had a look at it. And I know some of you have. So if you've seen this model before, this one, or you know of the two-sided business model and the telco business model I'm talking about, then you'll immediately see that it makes logical sense. If you haven't seen this before, how many people haven't seen this model before? Okay, a few of you. If you haven't seen this model before, you'll also see that it makes sense. It requires telcos to pay attention to both its downstream and upstream customers. The downstream customers are millions of customers, thousands of segments, medium enterprises, residential consumers, larger enterprises, and devices that require similar services. Upstream customers, well, they could be other telcos, healthcare providers, retailers, government entities, web players, industrial players, media companies, all very important factors to consider. In the blue box, these three areas: end-user service business, the traditional voice, messaging, media and data developed to and delivered and paid for by end users. The distribution platform business, allowing third-party providers to distribute voice, content and data services. And we're talking about internet, broadcast, multicast, SMS, circuit voice, etc. And then finally VAS or business platforms, which are allowing third-party service providers to better interact with downstream customers, things such as payment systems, NFCs. Okay, not a very inspiring chart here when you first look at it. Here's the traditional stuff. and again came from STL, who were developers of the two-sided business model. So nothing new in that part. There's still a lot of stuff happening on that front. Interesting to note about this chart, though, it's in percentage terms. So why is it interesting? Well, these are two areas that are probably worth having a look at, focusing on, because there could be some explosive growth on there. Even though in absolute terms, as you saw on the Gartner chart, the revenue outcomes out of those are small. But then, in terms of something new for telcos, it's non-traditional, high CAGRs, and again, the forecast here in terms of growth. Now, something about the other guys. So who are the other guys? Well, let's not get into too much theory. Let's talk about Skype and WhatsApp. I'll talk about some other things that they do in this space. So it's inevitable that the players in the mobile sector are seeing revenues decline, ARPU decline, messaging revenues decline. And why is that? Everyone talks about the proliferation and the explosive growth of mobile handsets. Well, if you have an iPhone, and I'm interested to know here, how many people have an iPhone? Okay, and who will have an iPhone 5 soon? I put my hand up for one with Singtel, so I don't know how long before I have to wait. But and there was a great thing that someone sent me on Facebook the other day. The iPhone 5 is a little bit longer. When the iPhone 20 comes out, it'll be this long. So I thought it was so clever, because it came out within half an hour of the announcements. So, some clever guys out there. I bet they don't work for telcos. I used to, by the way. Okay, so they're already having major impact on mobile space. And it can only get better or worse, depending on which side you're on, in the future. OTT service providers are shaking up the communication space. Now, the debate about whether OTT should be considered as a threat or an opportunity, that's pretty much old hat these days. Mobile operators view OTT as opportunities to generate incremental revenues. The question remains is when. They openly facilitate OTT strategies, and in fact some telcos are trying to be OTT players themselves. I'll refer to, say, the Singapore market, where Singtel has its own music delivery store called Amped. Now, embracing OTT should not be viewed by mobile operating community as a way of substituting the decline in voice and messaging revenues, but a way of delivering new incremental revenues. After all, it's consumers who are driving growth. They're jumping to OTT services in their hundreds of millions, and in the future, by the billions. And why do I say this? So let's take a look at the couple. So Skype is the king of OTT. Who owns Skype these days? Who owns Skype? Microsoft. Is Microsoft the first telco that comes to your mind? You talk about telcos? Well, believe me, in the telco circles, Microsoft is the first telco that comes to their minds. And then Google second, or the other way around. Look at these guys. Every day, 900 million users, so 1/6 of the planet, thereabouts, use it to make calls, free calls, 1 billion calls, 1 billion minutes of calls on a peer-to-peer basis. And off Skype, they make 40 million minutes of calls per day. These guys here, WhatsApp. I don't use WhatsApp anymore. I've changed to Viber, by the way. So I'm not one of those 75 million users who send 27 messages a day on WhatsApp. In 2016, and I'd love to know how they work these out, but Mobile Squared forecast 250 million users on WhatsApp if WhatsApp will be around in 4 years' time. And they'll send an average of 44 messages a day, or 11 billion messages every day. What about operators? Can operators make money from OTT services? Well, 16% of them said yes. And then 21% said not sure or no. Overwhelmingly, 2/3 of them said yes, they can, but at the expense of something else in their portfolio. So, forecasts for business traffic in 2013 will carry, and we're talking business traffic here, enterprise traffic, will carry as much video traffic as there is voice. Can the networks handle it? There are more mobile operating systems than PCs these days. And BYOD, bring your own device, yesterday was not the corporate norm. And I'm talking yesterday, day one. In a few months' time, it will be the corporate norm when they've worked out security and access and the fact that everybody wants something like that. Last year, there were more business voice minutes on mobile than on fixed lines. So that's not surprising that companies these days, enterprises, are now looking at ways of getting you not to use your mobile phone to make those calls and using their corporate telecommunications lines, which they pay a lot of big companies to install in them. So the demands are changing very quickly. 2013's only a few months away. But the fact remains that a very, very small percentage of telcos are actually partnering with OTT players to generate new revenue rather than just incremental traffic revenue. On the Gartner slide, internet advertising was also one of those dark blue circles. This is an area I'd been researching personally since about July of last year. And to the point where I got really excited about it, that I incorporated a company that now deals with it. And I'll tell you a little bit about that a bit later on. But what's different? What's different is we're talking about future customers. Everyone talks about future customers as a person or a consumer of a particular service. I decided to focus on captive portals as one segment that telcos could focus on. Because in my research, I found out that it was the least serviced, if not serviced at all, segments of consumers. So let me give you these examples here of internet service providers, hospitality, hotels, cafes, shopping malls, university campuses. Anywhere there is a captive portal. In other words, your own network. There's opportunities to monetize here. And in the M2M session, we heard about, is it going to make money? Well, this one can. Digital advertising is growing at exponential rates. It's not about 2G versus 3G versus 4G, LTE, M2M. It's about the customer and what they're going to do to run their own lives. Just as the reason Apple and their iPhone is successful, when that first came out, they said, people aren't going to stick with this because they want to change their phones every 12 months, every 18 months. Well, every single iPhone is a different iPhone. You customize it with apps to make it your phone. Same with this, same with advertising, same with portals. At the moment, telcos make money out of portal operators through subscription services. ISP makes money out of you by charging you $30 a month or whatever the rate is. And that's about it. Hotels charge you, some hotels are now gone to the let's give it to them for free. But a lot of hotels still make you pay $20 or $30 for internet advertising. And why is that? Because they pay somebody else $20 to provide that service. But when you turn that around, and I guess from an MBA audience, the commercial and business side has got to be as important as the way the technology delivers that, is can you make this commercially attractive? So I'm going to give you a really simple example, simply to illustrate what's possible. And it's not theory anymore, it's what really happens today. Let's take a look at an ISP of 20,000 prepaid and postpaid customers. And let's just say, at any one time, and we're talking simultaneous users, not people who are logged on, but simultaneously using them, 10,000 on an average 12-hour day. And in the research, the average usage is around about 17 hours a day that they will have a lot of traffic. And 80% of them are using a PC or a tablet, because as a subscriber to an ISP, you're not that mobile. You can see the number of advertising minutes, and I'm talking about a 5-ad banner. A 5-ad banner is simply a banner. You may have seen a banner at the bottom of the screen that have 5 ads in there. And they may rotate or they may not rotate. So in the advertising industry, that's called a 5-ad banner. Every time that shows up for a minimum period of 10 seconds, it's called an impression. And using this, we can have close to 28.8 million impressions each day. CPM, on the second bottom line there, is cost per mil, or cost per 1,000 impressions. Again, a way to advertise, a way to monetize and get charged for in the advertising industry. It used to be pay-per-click, click per action, but click per 1,000 impressions is kind of a norm and accepted way of charging these days. You can generate about $10 million a year, right? And these are quite conservative because CPM rates can vary. $1.50 is a little bit below average. $2.50 is about right in some countries. Can be up to $6 depending on what things are. But anyway, still $10 million a year. In Southeast Asia, in the big economies in Southeast Asia, of Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, the Philippines, there are 150 ISPs. Now, if we just do this 100 times, that's $1 billion. Who'd like $1 billion? Yes. Right? So, we're talking about 4G and 2G and M2M. But, as one of the speakers in the last one said, show me the money. Right? Now, end of the day, we're going to go into a business world. If you're going to go graduate from here and become a technologist or a scientist, this may not be of interest. But most of you guys are going to go into consulting firms. Some of us came from consulting firms. You're going to go into telcos, and they can talk about how we're going to make our money. How will we keep our customers? Where's the new avenues for revenue growth? This is only one of them. I'm only talking about it today because it's an area I decided to focus on. But there are plenty more out there. So if I'm a telco, what can I do? Telcos are already obtaining more than 15%, or about 15% of their revenue from adjacent industries, and we're talking banks and governments and healthcare and advertising and logistics. You can only see that grow because those symbiotic relationships are not going to become extraordinary. They will become the norm. Smaller telcos with low market share will get squeezed with their EBITDA. And this is their margins getting squeezed in the next couple of years. LTE. So it won't actually increase telco revenue significantly. However, because it enhances the user experience, it will still be an important thing that they'll have to invest in, and it'll probably take, somewhere between 30 to 35% off infrastructure investment to get into this stuff. Someone said yesterday that they wouldn't invest in technology if it didn't return a profit. However, sometimes you have to go a little bit of an indirect way and invest in technology that may not increase your revenue significantly, but increases your customer experience or UX significantly. And that, in the long term, will drive your revenues. In the next couple of years, over-the-top players will capture about 10% of the consumer mobile voice minutes in developed markets. And that will grow. And you'll see non-traditional services being provided by non-traditional companies and enterprises, i.e. not telcos, and so on. But the other thing is cloud strategy. So again, you'll see a lot of that development, whether they're being infrastructure players or application players in that space. And the other thing is, yesterday, a lot of discussion on big data. Big data is, in my opinion, personal data. A lot of that is personal data, all driven by networks, all the stuff that's out there. And so there'll be a lot more to look out for on that front. I think that's a trend that still hasn't been talked about. I think personal data is hidden under the tag of big data at the moment, but as privacy laws become more prevalent in developing countries, we'll see a lot more of that changing big data into personal data. How should you be different? And you meaning, how should you as a telco be different? And this blue duck kind of sticks up on our wall in the offices, because when we were first starting AdStream, investors, venture capitalists will always ask us, why are we unique? And we just show them a picture of a blue duck. And they go, it's just a duck with dyed feathers. So then we found on PowerPoint that you could add dots and spots and shading to it. And we said, go find a duck like that. So that's why we'll be different, because we could adapt. But you never find a blue duck with spots there anyway. Now, the thing you can read those 3 points, right? Protecting your growth through customer experience, i.e. developing a deep understanding of your customer. Customer intimacy, you heard yesterday, is the new foundation for competitive advantage. You've got to look beyond legacy voice and data, and remember that control and ownership of the network and infrastructure are no longer sufficient. We've just shown it. You've just seen a couple of slides that show that. And then you need to focus on innovative partnerships and new business models, particularly in the adjacent or industry verticals. Okay, so we're talking here about something that, again, I think that is really important, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're a seasoned corporate executive or you're just starting your business and you're consulting to a customer. If you can make them see that no one else in the market is doing what we plan to do, you've got them. Right? You convince them that no one else is going to do what you plan to do, you've got them. That's the way to do it. And then you go out there and you be first. The last bit. Who was AdStream? We're an internet advertising solutions provider. We chose captive portal networks as our segment to focus on because we found that nobody was servicing them. We could also be called a technology company because we provide and assess and design location-based services, which we like to call indoor GPS. We bring together ad networks, we bring together billing systems, we bring together marketers, we bring together gamification technologies and applications to increase loyalty, stickiness. We engage in new ways of revenue sharing all different stuff. And it's real fun stuff. It's stuff that I'm glad I got out of the corporate world. And I hope one or two of you will also jump on the startup bandwagon. It's really great fun. I belong to a entrepreneur and tech startup community in Singapore, and it's funded heavily by the government. And they're all guys, young guys, who dress in jeans and t-shirts every day. So I did break the rules, and that's how I dress every day. And I broke the rules again today by wearing a suit. I was scared to put this on because I hadn't worn this for a year or so, and I did remember how to tie my tie this morning. So I guess some things do stick with you. But adapt and change. I had to adapt and change my environment. Telcos need to adapt and change in the ever-changing environment. It's been a real pleasure to be here. They're all my contacts. It's easy to find me. I don't hide behind anything. You just need to search my name. You'll find all these things here. I hope you got at least one take-home message. That would have been, at least this would have been useful. There's a networking break and there's the rest of the half a day, so I'm happy to have a chat with you at any time. And with that, that's the end of my session. Thank you very much. I can take one or two questions if there are any. Yes, sir.
Sir, when it comes to good morning, sir. I'm Bhaumik Shah from Marketing and Finance second year. Sir, when it comes to telcos, OTT operators are cannibalizing their revenues. So, and the trend is that in the future also OTT services acceptance will increase continuously. Sir, what is the new revenue generating model for telcos, seeing that their networks will be used by Facebook and Google types of OTT networks?
Well, I think, sorry, it's just a bit blinding here. I think one is to become an OTT player yourself. I think you'll see telcos starting to do that. They already have. Will Singtel's AMP service replace iTunes? Don't think so. But if you've got enough stuff there, maybe you'll just restrict the outflow of revenue to someone else. Will they embrace free minutes? Well, now, again, I'll talk from a Singapore environment where fibre to the home, 100 megabyte service to the home is going to penetrate to 90% of the houses. Will they provide video services on demand because you don't have to wait forever? Will they provide downloading services where you don't have to set up your Pirate Bay at 11 o'clock at night and torrent it and get up in the morning and see whether your episode downloaded? You can get a session within 30 minutes these days, right? Those sorts of things. So I don't know whether it's one or the other. The world is going to coexist and they'll have different market shares at different times. Like I said, Singtel and StarHub in Singapore offer you a whole bunch of stuff of fast internet, digital phone services, which are free, movie services. So they're learning, and there's no doubt that the rest of the world is following or doing things at the same time. So I'm not sure that, what are they going to do? You can't beat them, you're going to join them.
So they'll compete directly with Facebook and Google by being an OTT player?
Well, I would invest in Google.
Okay. Yes, sir. Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay. Yes, sir, one more question. Oh, you've got it written down.
What is it, sir?
This could be tough. Okay, go ahead.
This is Anand from Marketing second year. You said to be ahead in competition, we need to adapt to conditions. We need to adapt to the situation around. So, but what I feel is you should make others adapt to what you are doing, sir. So what your take on this, sir?
Make others, so the question is...
You should be innovative, build a model so that others should adapt to what you are doing.
Well, good theory. I think people are using Skype. 900 million users are using Skype every day because it's easy and they can and it's free. Right? Change that tidal wave, right? And you'll be the next Zuckerberg. So, yes, go for it. I mean, it's a great theory, and I'm sure there will be a technology or two that will fit right into that. But, you know, we're talking about the consumer demand here. I'm talking about, you know, being in a commercial world, and I would personally much rather give something that the consumer likes and will buy from me than try to change their minds, because they're already telling me what they want. Okay?
So we can be one step ahead of the consumers, like think differently and make them what you make.
Look, yesterday at the beginning we heard about, you know, Steve Jobs would never listen to any consumer group, and he said, I know better and I will tell you, and it worked. And yes, so it's possible, right? But there are not that many of him around. Well, none around at the moment, but it fits. You know, what else can I say? It's a good theory. You'll come up with something, but it's not where the majority of stuff is. And you know, sometimes you've got to be a salmon and swim with the rest of the guys, even though you're swimming upstream. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, so that's it. So thanks very much.